Welcome to Practical Talk Time. I'm your host, Usha Kumar. Today we are going to talk about gender images in the media. And I have here with me Kyle Pinto, who is a Men's Initiative Coordinator at the Women's Center of Greater Danbury.
Thank you for having me.
Hi, Kyle.
How are you?
It's so nice to have you here.
Thank you.
Gender images. We all grow up with some images of how we are supposed to act and look and dress, if you're a man or a woman or a boy or a girl.
Right.
So, is there any way that we have to think differently?
Well, you're absolutely right. We start off in this world from the hospital room. We're given a pink cap or a blue cap, or now I think it's maybe green and yellow. But we're categorized, and we're saying male, female.
Yeah, even the rooms are all decorated with flowers and pink color if it's girl, and
exactly.
Buses and fire trucks and blue if you're a boy.
The trucks and the football and the baseball, right.
So the expectations start right there.
Exactly, right from the beginning. And you know, something that I try to, when I am with my students, I try to explain to them that sex is one thing. Sex is biological. Sex is, the hormones and the biology. But when we're talking about gender, we're talking about the social expectation or the set of rules set by society that say male, female, based on sex, but it really comes down to gender. And it's a fluid thing. It really is very fluid because it's changed throughout time. This idea of being a man, being a woman has changed dramatically over the years.
What's happening with that as far as society goes? Current society.
Current society. Well, right now we have a society where men are, this idea of masculinity is very tough, and there's different attributes assigned to masculinity. Physically strong, and that's been over the last couple of years, maybe decades, whereas women need to be nurturing, caring, even maybe over-emotional, and this idea that that's what women do. Now, what's different is that maybe we could have a discussion 50 years ago and say, well, the woman's role is in the kitchen and the man's role is at work. That's changed. Absolutely, that's changed. Where we see women are more in the workforce, absolutely, men are taking up more of the household tasks. But really, there's still something deeper that we need to get to. What do we understand as being a man, or manhood, or womanhood? And it's very complex. It's very mixed up, especially for a young boy or a young girl growing up and seeing what they need to be, and they're taking after role models.
And it's not really bad, right? If you want to be the very perfect girl or boy, that's not bad. When does that become a problem?
That's a great question. Yeah, exactly, because it's not a bad to begin with. The problem we see is that if it becomes an expectation, maybe that person doesn't want to choose to be that way, would prefer not to be that. The social pressure on that person could be more damaging than anything. The internal pressure, the pressure of how come I'm not fitting in, it damages someone's self-esteem. It damages maybe their ability to relate with other people. It really takes a toll on someone's confidence if they feel like they don't fit in. Or it could go on the other side of the spectrum where someone absolutely tries to fit in as hard as they can.
And they act up more than they have to.
Right, and especially when we have a stereotype of men, or this ideal of men, where you have to be aggressive, you have to be tough. It's built into the system where if someone tries to be masculine, it might end in violence. It might end in actually someone getting hurt.
Yeah. So how does one get an idea of the image for, oh, this is what a feminine person should be, or this is what a masculine person should be.
Well, I'll give you an example.
Where do they get all these images?
Oh, all over the place, really. We might say mom or dad, and actually, this is something that I ask my students. I say, where do you learn, or from whom do you learn how it means to be a man, what it means to be a man.
What is their role?
And what is their role? And sometimes they'll say mom, sometimes they'll say dad. Oh, actually, there was one incident where I had a group of 20 20-year-olds, men, all men, and I said, where did you learn what it means to be a man? And I assumed they were all going to say their father. Surprisingly, most of them said their mother, and that's where they're taught what it means to be a man. Also, what was a big thing, where they learn is the media. And the media being television, movies, newspapers, magazines. These images are surrounding us. When you walk into the store, when you're in the store, advertising is a multi-billion-dollar facet of our economy, so they're really trying to get at you. They're really trying to give you a message. So when you put that much money towards something, you're going to succeed. And these young men, and sometimes adult men, take these messages on very clearly. Actually, an example would be modern day. There's the Old Spice commercial. I don't know if you've seen it, where there's a very fit, handsome man, and he's riding a horse, and he's got this deep voice, and he's extremely masculine and trying to be kind of a womanizer. And it's gotten so much popularity. People love it. And clearly, he's just a stereotype. He's just an image of being a man. And people love it. So people go towards it. So they see it in these advertisings, in the movies, all around them.
What does Women's Center do to help people with their acting up because of these images? I think that's what you take care of, right?
Well, we do a lot of things at the Women's Center. Yeah, absolutely. We do some things. Well, just first off, I mean, the Women's Center is in Danbury, but we serve the 11 towns around Danbury. So really lower Litchfield, upper Fairfield counties. Anyone in those communities could certainly give us a call. And you could look us up online. We are called the Women's Center of Greater Danbury, but our address online is WCOGD, just the initials, .org. And anyone can look us up there.
Can you repeat it one more time for the audience?
It's just www. I almost forgot. WCOGD. So it's just the initials of Women's Center of Greater Danbury, .org. And anyone can reach us through there. You can find all of our contact information. We have, our office number is 203-731-5200. However, we do have
all the services are free?
Absolutely, absolutely. I was just going to mention that we have 2 hotlines, and one of them is for anyone who may be experiencing sexual assault or just needs information about sexual assault, sexual harassment. It's a free hotline, no charge. It's also confidential, which is really big. We have the ability at the Women's Center to not really ask for information. If you don't want to give the information, that's okay. You know, we're not going to say, give me a number to call you back at. It's completely confidential, so whatever information you feel necessary, you can give. And that's what makes it so great. So we have 2 hotlines, one for the sexual assault and one for domestic violence or dating violence. So I encourage, when I'm out in the high schools talking to students, I encourage some of the high school students who may be involved in an unhealthy relationship just to call, just to say, you know, I need some more information. And we're open, the 24-hour hotline. It's the phone number is 24 hours. Anyone can call those, men, women, adults, children. Just because it's called the Women's Center doesn't mean we don't help men. We actually do help a lot of men who experience domestic violence, violence of any sort, sexual assault. So we service a lot. We do group therapy, or groups, you know, anyone who's going through a life change. We have all kinds of services in that realm. So we do have a lot of services as far as education. That's where I come in. Is at the Women's Center, my team and we go into the schools, we go into community groups, and we educate people about these issues, because it's really, sometimes people keep it under wraps. They keep it in the house. You know, domestic violence isn't a community issue. We shouldn't talk about it. And what really needs to be heard is that it is absolutely an issue that people can get help for. People can talk about. It's confidential, so you don't necessarily have to go to the police if you don't want to. There are other resources out there.
Yeah, and I do believe that, you know, every community is judged by the way it treats other beings, you know, fellow beings, especially, you know, your family members or your loved ones.
Right.
And it's good that the Women's Center helps people with these. So when you talk to children from high school, or when you speak with young adults from colleges, how do they react to this gender imagery?
It's a battle. It really is an uphill battle, because this is their culture. This is what they've been grown up in. They're immersed in these images and these messages, especially with the internet, which has been an incredible resource. It also is very restrictive in a certain way, because people see, people have exposure to a lot more now, which again isn't a bad thing, but there are times where it could be negative. But when I come into a classroom, first off, I say, my name is Kyle and I'm from the Women's Center. Dead silence, because they're shocked, first of all, that a man is coming from the Women's Center. I could be in a room full of adults and I'll say, hi, my name is Kyle, I'm from the Women's Center. And they're quiet and they're shocked, because why would a man be at the Women's Center? Well, the whole idea there is that, yes, we service, we serve women who may be experiencing this violence, but we also help men. We kept the name the Women's Center because it's rooted in the 1970s women's rights movement, where we really tried to give women a voice. So we've continued with that mission and that passion, that drive. But right now we're helping anyone in the community who may be experiencing this. So they look at me and they say, well, all right, no, all right, fine. Okay, they can get past that I'm a guy and I'm from the Women's Center. All right, they get past that. Yeah. Then I try to educate them and talk to them about how advertising affects them, and they say, "No way, absolutely not. I could care less. I look at the commercials, and that's it. I'm on my way. I leave it alone." And then when we talk further, we actually realize that what they're saying and what they're doing and how they're acting is almost the exact image that they saw in the movie or that they saw somewhere. And I'm experiencing this too. I struggle with trying to break free from that message, that image. So it's everybody. It's not just young people. It's older men, it's women, it's young men. The idea there is, like I said, from birth, we're told what gender we are. So it's really hard to break away from that and to just choose ourselves, choose our own identity.
How does this kind of self-image or image of a man or a woman, how does it affect society? How does it affect the people there? Right.
Yeah, I think you know, we might be saying, well, what does gender images have anything to do with domestic violence or sexual assault? And that's the link, is that it has a huge piece to do with it. We know, for instance, that sexual assault, domestic violence, dating violence, all of these forms of relationship violence are rooted. There's a common thread in all types of abuse in power and control, this need for one person to take power over another person, to have control and dominance over another person. That's what we find in every case. It's not anger management, it's not anything else. So we try to dig a little deeper. Where does this come from? Where does this, why is this happening? And what we find is that there's a very heavy message in masculinity, saying you need to be dominant to all the men, and growing up, I experienced it too. You need to be tough, man up, don't cry, boys will be boys, you can wrestle, no big deal. Women, on the other hand, there's this overall message of be caring, be more emotional, take care of your family, to the point where it could almost be submissive. And again, caring and being emotional or being tough at times, these are not bad things. The core that I want to educate people on is that when it becomes to an extreme, when it gets to that point where that's all you are, and you don't have a spectrum of resources or tools inside of you, or you don't have that confidence to use everything at your disposal, it could become a violent situation. It could become a very unhealthy situation. There's no life to a relationship where one person plays one role and the other person plays one role. There's no spark in that relationship.
Yeah, these gender images, they create some kind of expectation that, oh, I want this person to be like this because that's what they're supposed to be.
Right, right.
And
there's a heavy expectation on that other person, right? And that could be disappointing for the other person because maybe they're not all that chalked up to be. A big thing that when I talk to with my students, and this is really across all ages, is I hear from young men and other men saying that, well, women want me to be tough and they want me to take control, but I don't really want to sometimes. Sometimes I want to just kind of not make a decision or do something. And so the idea there is that who's hurting? Is it that person, or is it their partner who may be expecting too much? So it really goes both ways. It's internal, it's the person expecting too much, and it's really at a society level. We're classifying people to the point where it could be damaging.
Yeah, this sounds like it needs some communication.
Yes.
If they can only tell the other person that this is what I'm expecting because you are you.
Right, right.
And then the other person can say, oh no, don't expect all of this from me. You know,
Right.
I'm masculine to this degree, and then I want to be just free and
Right, right.
Relaxed for these things.
Right.
You know, how does one verbalize it, and how do they say it?
And that's a big piece of our education too, is trying to give them those skills. How do you communicate?
Yeah.
Again, a big part of being a man, or the images of being a man, we think of Dirty Harry, where he doesn't say a word. He just kind of squints his eyes and he grumbles a little bit, but nothing affects him, nothing hurts him. He doesn't talk to anybody. He's a loner. And sometimes people might look to that and say, "Wow, that's a real man," and we'll say, "No, that's not. That's a character." You need to learn how to talk, how to express yourself, how to use the right words, how to listen to other people, how to understand what that person is thinking.
Yeah, expressing feelings is not men's forte, is it?
Well, right, that's the thing. All men, and this is my argument when I sit down with them, is I say, listen, guys, I know you think that men have to be tough. I know you know that men have two emotions. You can either be stoic, nothing can bother you, invulnerable.
Be very silent.
Silent, right, and strong.
Or just grunt.
just grunt, where nothing bothers you. Or you could be angry, and you could start throwing things. Either case,
yelling.
you're a man, and yelling and screaming and cursing, right, and being tough. Right, okay, but I know deep inside that there are a whole range of emotions that you're not letting out, you're not showing. Now, and this is where they all say, oh, don't be so sappy, don't be ridiculous.
Yeah, wouldn't simple communication be all that it takes?
Right, it would be very simple, and we're just trying to say exactly that it's okay, that sometimes maybe your partner, your romantic partner, your friend wants to communicate. That's okay, and we're trying to get them to understand that and to give them the skills how to do it. Yeah.
What kind of response do you get from college kids, from the boys, when you say, oh, we want you to communicate, and talk about your feelings, or discuss your expectations of each other?
It really is
funny.
How
does that work?
You have to have a sense of humor. You really have to have a sense of humor, because they'll attack you. Then they'll say, no, that's crazy, that's bull, or whatever they say. But I have to kind of use that humor and use that understanding and kind of show them how, just in that room, they're interacting, and they're very, they are showing a diverse spectrum of emotions. And so they'll give me the cold shoulder, they'll fight me on it, but after a discussion, and that's what's so key about this program, is that they have to talk about it. And then we realize that each individual guy actually has a lot to say and has good skills to talk. But what happens is, in a room of 20 guys, let's say there's one or two who may be making a joke or coming out with maybe challenging the other guys. But those other 19, 18 guys are really smart, and they really want to talk. And so if I can get them to stand up and speak up, then those other two, they're quiet. So what we see is a dynamic where only a few men are running the show. A few men are dictating, where everyone else kind of follows along. And I'm trying to say, don't follow. Be your own person. And this is where it leads into domestic violence and sexual assault, because the numbers show, and the research shows over and over again, that even though the majority of perpetrators in domestic violence, the majority of people who commit sexual assault are men, the majority of men are not violent. The majority of men will not commit violence in any sort, emotional abuse or sexual abuse. They won't, the majority of men. So we're trying to get those men to speak up and not to just to be quiet about it. So.
And how do the women react to some of these expectations and images of what they want men to be.
Right. And that's also been a big challenge. Yeah. I went into this program. It's a very new program, you know, only a year old. I expected women to say, "Yeah, right on, Kyle." They didn't. Women said, "No, we want our men. We want these men to be tough and to be strong." So now I'm thinking, oh, okay, well, let's work on this. Let's understand. I realized we're all in the same culture together. We all have these messages bombarding us. So what I try to do is I try to get the women as well to say it's okay for men, it's okay for women to be multifaceted. So it's a challenge with women as well. They're not always on board. They'll be shy at first, but then they acknowledge what I'm trying to say.
And I guess some of the women who went for the most masculine kind of man are the ones who end up victims of many of these.
Well, it's possible. I don't know. You know, it's interesting. They might expect something. They might expect this very masculine, you know, man. Now, the other thing too, you bring up a good point, is to be a man, sexuality is a big thing. Sexuality is a huge thing, and we assume that men are heterosexual, or to be a real man, you have to be heterosexual. And a lot of work I do is I try to coach these men and women, because unfortunately a lot of young people are, you know, succumb to this, where they use derogatory words in a very homophobic nature, and they try to exclude homosexuality in itself, that it's unnatural. And what I try to say is, wait a second, hold on. It doesn't mean what you're doing, just by using language, you are separating people. You are excluding people. You're putting people in a box, or you're pushing them out. We need to work on this, and we have a really strong discussion on what's the difference between our language in regards to homosexuality, heterosexuality, why are we assuming certain things, and we have a good discussion about that too, because relationships occur on all planes. We're looking between men and women, between men and men, women and women, so we have to incorporate all of that.
There's also a need for people to understand one another, right?
Yes.
Especially within a family.
Right.
Or amongst friends, or even at the workplace, you know.
Right.
You need to understand where the other person comes from.
Right.
Often that's the hardest part.
Sure.
How do you walk in the other person's shoes?
Right, exactly.
Right?
How do you
and
walk
you have
in
to do
someone's
that
shoes?
to understand, and then have that empathy.
Right, and that's a key word, empathy, is that we try to coach men on empathy. Now, women have been taught empathy, they've been taught to communicate, they've been taught to, you know, again, I'm making a general social statement that tends to be the thing where women are taught how to be the caretakers. Men are taught not to do that. Men are taught not to communicate or empathize with the other person. So what we find is that sometimes people who have committed violence, who have committed any range of emotional abuse or physical abuse, sexual abuse, domestic violence, dating, they don't have empathy. They don't understand the other person's perspective. But again, that's a small percentage of men, so I want to make sure that all men understand that it's okay to empathize, it's good to empathize. We actually did a program at the Women's Center called Walk a Mile in Her Shoes, and we got some fraternity boys at fraternity men, excuse me, at WestCon to organize a Walk a Mile in Her Shoes, where we had these students literally walk a mile in high-heeled shoes to make a statement, make an image saying, listen, we are men, but we understand how much violence is going on.
So how did they like it?
They hated it. They hated every minute of it. I think we had about 18 twisted ankles.
Yeah, and those heels may not have been that much either, right?
No, well, no, they were big. We made sure to get a real statement, yes. Bright red or big slippers.
And there's no need for women to be wearing those either.
And that's a great thing.
Right. Why ruin your ankles and your
Exactly.
muscles and everything?
Right.
A lot of people don't understand that.
Right.
And
But
they look at the images where they see celebrity wearing the 6-7-inch heels.
Right.
And they don't know that these celebrities, they just put them on and sit there for a show, and then they take that right off.
Right.
And the common person goes and spends all of their fortune or their entire week's pay on one pair of shoes that they shouldn't even be bothering to wear.
And you know, it's fine to buy nice shoes, but
nice shoes without all those heels.
Without the heels,
nice, comfortable, and pretty ones are good.
But you bring up a good point. Is that that's a
image
stereotype.
part? Yeah, the stereotyping.
And it's very restrictive for women, and we try to get men to understand that it's a restrictive imagery, just like a lot of images. And you know, especially for women, women have a very restrictive image. body type, their sexuality, their emotional. So it's very restrictive on both genders, really.
Where do you find most of these, most of this kind of thinking? What age group or in which demographic group?
Well, it's very difficult for anyone to just kind of wake up and say, you know what, I'm going to challenge society. It's very hard. It's very hard. We may romanticize about taking the less traveled path, but people have a difficult time doing it. So the age group that I have the most success is when they're young, and they're in elementary school, middle school, because they're still learning. And so if I walk in as a man saying, guys, it's okay, to be respectful, to listen, there's some flexibility there. It gets harder as people get older. So I could be in a room full of adult men, and it's a struggle because they are built and they have 50 plus years of experience in this particular way, and here I am, some kid essentially compared to them, challenging them. So it's very difficult to say, but at the same time, people across all ages are changing it. We're making a huge stride to a lot of men, a lot of women are changing their ideas.
Yeah. Children, they absorb a lot from their families, from their homes, but then they do spend a lot of time outside these days. They spend hours and hours at school, and then they spend hours with friends.
Right.
And then the free time that they have at home even, gone are the days when you're with other family members, unless your own family is large. Most kids are in single, very tiny unit families, and the free time that they have, they're watching television or they're watching a movie
or the
at
internet,
home.
right.
So that's what they are getting influenced by, and now more with the internet.
Exactly.
That's definitely true.
Right.
But then there's the good side to this, because of all of these outside influences, they can be trained to be more empathetic.
Absolutely, and that's part of the our program, is that we are trying to train and educate and give them some other resources, some other role models, and so if anybody is interested, again, they can always check us out online. So it's just www.wcogd.org, and they can get more information about that.
Thank you very much, Kyle. This has been a wonderful chat here with you.
My pleasure.
And I hope all our audience benefited from this too.
Absolutely.
Hey, thank you all for watching, and until next time, goodbye.